Vardari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 So we continue reading from Transcendental Diary. Because of his vast responsibilities in Africa and all the problems he has to face there, he expressed his inability to attend the festival in Mayapur this year. Out of the 17 devotees in Africa, only 5 have missionary visas. The rest will have to leave due to a change in immigration laws. Most of the local men that had joined have now left, stealing practically everything of value as they went. So the question comes to mind, he wrote, why are we here? At least I have a little hope that the Africans will ever take seriously to Krishna consciousness. Brahmananda explained that their primary field for preaching is among the Indian community, but they are also being forced to leave by the government. He gave a very bleak overview of the potential for preaching in the entire continent. This is really a disturbed part of the world, and offers very little opportunity to spread our movement. Americans cannot travel to the Congo or Uganda. We are already banned in Zambia. Tanzania has refused our attempt to register there, and I have been arrested twice there. Ethiopia, from where I have just returned in December, is very tense and going communist very rapidly. Mozambique just had a revolution, and there is an open war in Angola. Our men just returned from Sudan, which is incredibly poor and destitute, and so is Chad, Central African Republic, etc. Only Nigeria seems to offer an opportunity of establishing a center. All the other GBCs have civilized areas of the world that are developed to spread this movement. There were two bright spots though. He has paid off $1,860 from his BBT debt of $12,000. And in Mauritius, a small band of brahmacharis are being well received and preaching enthusiastically all around the island. Prabhupada was sympathetic but purposeful. In his reply, he encouraged Brahmananda to work vigorously and continue with his efforts to preach. He also suggested he base himself in Mauritius, which Prabhupada described as a nice place by the sea. As for whether he should remain in Africa or not, Prabhupada said that will have to be discussed by the GBC. Srila Prabhupada ki. Okay, so we're reading today from the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, reading from canto number 6, chapter number 5, entitled Narad Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha. And today we're reading from text number 38. Evam tvam niranukrosho balanam matibidhare Parshada madhyacharasi Yasoha nirapatrapa Evam tvam nirano krosho Balana matibidhare Parshada madhyacharasi Yashoha nirapatrapa Evam tvam nirano krosho Balana matibidhare Parshada madhyacharasi Yashoha nirapatrapa
Evam tvam niranukrosho Balanamati vidare Parshadamati charasi Yashoha nirapatrava Evam tvam niranukrosho Balanamati vidare Parshadamadye charasi Yashoha nirapatravaha Evam tvam niranukrosho Balanamati vidare Parshadamadye charasi Yashoha nirapatravaha
Mataji's.
Evam tvam niranukrosho
Balanamati vidare
Parshadamati charasi Yashoha nirapatrava
Evam
Evam das Tvam You Narada Niranukrosha without compassion Balanam of innocent inexperienced boys Matibhed contaminating the consciousness Hare of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Parshada Madhya among the personal associates Charasi travel Yashaha defaming the Supreme Personality of Godhead Nirapatrapa although you do not know what you are doing you are executing sinful activities without shame. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. Prajapati Daksha continued, thus committing violence against other living entities and yet claiming to be an associate of Lord Vishnu, you are defaming the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You needlessly created a mentality of renunciation in innocent boys. Therefore you are shameless and devoid of compassion. How could you travel with the personal associates of the Supreme Lord? Purport. The mentality of Prajapati Daksha still continues even today. When young boys join the Krishna consciousness movement, their fathers and so-called guardians are very angry at the propounder of the Krishna consciousness movement because they think that their sons have been unnecessarily induced to deprive themselves of material enjoyments of eating, drinking and merrymaking. Karmis, fruitive workers, think that one should fully enjoy his present life in the material world and also perform some pious activities to be promoted to the higher planetary systems for further enjoyment in the next life. A yogi, however, especially a bhakti yogi, is callous to the opinions of this material world. He is not interested in traveling to the higher planetary systems of the demigods to enjoy a long life in an advanced materialistic civilization. As stated by Prabodhananda Saraswati, Kaivalyam narakayate dridasapur akasha pushpayate. For a devotee merging into the Brahman, existence is hellish, and life in the higher planetary systems of the demigods is will-o'-the-wisp, a phantasmagoria with no real existence at all. A pure devotee is not interested in yogic perfection, travel to higher planetary systems, or oneness with Brahman. He is interested only in rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since Prajapati Daksha was a karmi, he could not appreciate the great service Narad Muni had rendered his 11,000 sons. Instead, he accused Narad Muni of being sinful and charged that because Narad Muni was associated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord would also be defamed. Thus, Daksha criticized that Narad Muni was an offender to the Lord, although he was known as an associate of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki Mama Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshoranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Pasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki. So here Prajapati Daksha is continuing his criticism of Narad Muni. Srila Prabhupada says that when young boys become interested in Krishna consciousness or children become interested and the preachers encourage them to turn away from material life, then their parents become very angry. Actually, we were just reading about Brahmananda Prabhu in Africa, and even Brahmananda Prabhu and his brother Garga Muni Prabhu, when they joined, even their parents, his mother specifically, was very disturbed. They tell the story of how both of them had joined in 26 2nd Avenue in 1966. And then one time the mother, she came to see what they were doing, how they were living. So Prabhupada was lecturing and then their mother walked in. So then Prabhupada arranged for her to have a seat. So everyone else was sitting on the floor, but Srila Prabhupada gave her a seat, so she was sitting on the seat and then she was looking. And so then after the lecture she came to Srila Prabhupada and she said, so what are my boys doing here? So Prabhupada explained they're serving Krishna very, very nicely. So she was becoming, she was not so happy about that. And then Prabhupada said, they are living here, we are feeding them, we are giving them shelter, we are giving them service to Krishna, we're taking care of them very nicely, we're molding them into becoming ideal citizens. So then Prabhupada looked at her and said, would you like to give a donation? So she was already thinking, I can't. So Prabhupada said, would you like to give a donation? Then she looked at Prabhupada, she said, I already donated my 2 sons. Prabhupada said, you donated them? Okay, that's okay then. That's okay. So Prabhupada tricked her. So she accepted, I donated my sons. So like this, the parents are sometimes, people actually feel this renunciation is the biggest loss. Even now I travel and often I meet people, you sit next to people on a plane, they have no idea, but then they see you, then they say like, who are you? You're a monk. So you get into many conversations with people. And so many people, they say, this is terrible, like you're young, you had an education, you could have done so many things in your life. They can't, for them renunciation is the most terrible thing. They can't, There's actually one story of one criminal. He had committed some crime. So he was running away, trying to not get caught by the police. So then he decided, I need to go somewhere where no one will find me. So of all the places he decided to hide in, he decided to join a Hare Krishna temple. He thought, no one will find me here. So this criminal, he joined the Hare Krishna temple. He says, I want to join, I want to become a monk. So he came in the temple and then he started living as a brahmachari. So, you know, he was doing everything that they do in a Hare Krishna temple. Anyway, finally, after living in the Hare Krishna temple, hiding from the police, he actually became attracted to Krishna. He said, these are really nice people, this is a great life. But then because he got purified by the process, he felt, oh no, but I committed a crime, I should be honest. The devotee is honest. So after some months of living, the police didn't catch him, but he himself went to the police station. And he said, actually, I have to confess, I committed this crime. And I'm now coming to admit what I did wrong. So then they called a court case on him. So then they came to the court, and then the judge, he was fascinated. Like, this is the first time ever a criminal himself has come to admit. So then the judge was looking at him and he said, like, so, you know, you hid out in a Hare Krishna temple? Like, what were you doing all day? So he said, I was sleeping on the floor. We wake up every day at 4:30 in the morning. We have a cold shower. We go out all day and in the rain or the shine, and, you know, we ask people for donations. And you know, we eat very little, very, very simple, and we sleep just a few hours every day. So the judge was hearing all of this, and then he looked at him and he said, I should be sentencing you to prison, but to be honest, the place where you're living sounds worse than prison. So I should be sending you to jail. But to be honest, the place that you're in sounds even worse than jail. Maybe you should just stay there, you know. So the judge just couldn't understand it. Like, why would someone live like this? So here, Daksha, he just can't understand, like, why someone would just induce others to turn away from material enjoyment. Daksha also has some religiosity about him. And he also believes that later on in life, someone should renounce. But first, they should experience all the pleasure. To induce someone immediately to give up everything is very, very bad. But what Daksha doesn't realize is that there are 3 ways in which one can learn. The best way to learn is that you simply hear the knowledge and you get the lesson, and you learn. This is called first-class intelligence. But if one doesn't learn like that, then it's explained you have to hear, but you also have to observe, and then you learn. That's called second-class intelligence. But then it's said that third-class intelligence is that you hear, you observe, but you still don't understand, and therefore you have to experience. So Daksha's philosophy is that everyone should have to experience. They should experience material life. They should experience everything. And then after doing all of that, then they can renounce because they've experienced, therefore they have knowledge. But Daksha doesn't understand that first-class intelligence means that one understands the point without even having to experience it. So this is what the preachers do. Narad Muni, by his deep realization, by his deep conviction, he speaks to someone and he's able to awaken realization within them because of his own realization. And therefore, if someone hears from someone who is very, very powerful, very, very realized, then simply by their words, all of their material attachments can be cut. The Bhagavatam says this is the definition of a sadhu. Tatodu sangha mutsrija sadhu satseta buddhiman shanta evasya chindanti manovyasangam uktibi. That the words of a saintly person are razor sharp. Sadhu or saintly person means one who cuts. But how does he cut? Using the sharp words that come from his mouth. And what does he cut? Mano vyasangam uktibi. All the attachments that are within the mind. Therefore, a sadhu is known as one who cuts, because his razor sharp words cut all of the attachments that are within the mind. And so Narad Muni, by his words, he was able to cut the attachment, whatever was there, of these 11,000 sons, and he was able to induce them into a life of renunciation. People think renunciation is a great loss, because when you become renounced, you lose all your ambition. People think life is about being ambitious. Life is about achieving things in the world. Life is about exploring everything that the world has to offer. And therefore, when someone takes up spirituality and becomes renounced, it's the greatest loss, because they lose their ambition. But would you say a spiritual person is unambitious? Actually, a spiritual person is the most ambitious. It's not that when we take up renunciation or we take up Krishna consciousness, we lose our ambition, but rather we develop the biggest ambition, the highest ambition, the most elevated ambition, which is to attain eternal, unending, pure, divine love of God. This is the biggest thing to aim for. And when one pursues the highest ambitions, then they're the ones that actually make the biggest impact in the world. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada, can anyone say he was unambitious? He, at the age of 70, traveled the world 14 times, opened 108 temples, initiated 5,000 disciples, and did so many amazing things. Because his ambition went beyond the material, and his ambition went to the spiritual. And when we are ambitious for spiritual things, then life becomes very, very magical. So here, Daksha just can't understand it. He says, Prabhupada says, every preacher will be criticized. If there's no opposition, then it probably means you're not doing that much. As soon as you start doing something, definitely there will be opposition. And therefore, if a preacher faces opposition, they can take heart. It means that they're actually doing the work of God. Sometimes they give the analogy, in India they have balconies like on the rooftop, and sometimes people are flying kites on the top. So sometimes this analogy is given that a sadhu is walking past and there's one child on the top of the building, and the child is flying a kite. And on the ground floor, the parents are watching television. So what happens is the sadhu is walking by and he sees the child flying the kite, but he sees that because the child is so fixed on seeing the kite in the sky, that the child doesn't realize that he's coming to the edge of the building. And as the child is coming to the edge of the building, the sadhu on the ground is shouting, "Watch out, you're going to fall! Watch out, you're going to fall!" And the mother and father that are on the ground floor watching TV, they're saying, "Just be quiet, why are you making so much noise? I'm watching television here." And this analogy is used to explain what's going on in the world. That people are basically committing spiritual suicide. The preacher is coming in and trying to help them, and in the course of helping them to save their life, those who are watching by, engaged in material life, are thinking that the preacher is causing a disturbance. This is basically what Daksha was thinking. And so one should be ready that when they try to share the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, then some people definitely they will become agitated. They won't be happy. Therefore, the job of a preacher is to make the comfortable uncomfortable. Those who are comfortable in their material life, a preacher must make them uncomfortable. A preacher must share the words that nobody else will say. A preacher must reveal the truths that nobody else will dare to reveal. A preacher must also speak that which is very, very difficult for people to digest. Once we were in a hospital and there was one devotee was in hospital, and then we saw two doctors coming out of one room, and they were speaking to each other. So I don't think they realized, but we overheard them. And one doctor was saying to the other doctor, "I love this job. I really love this job. We can help people. But this one part of the job where we have to tell people that they're about to die, this part I really don't like." So this is the job of a preacher, that sometimes they also have to say things that people won't like. They have to say things that people find difficult to digest. They have to also reveal the harsh reality. And but a preacher must do this because they have to be truthful. Satyam, priyam, hitam. Austerity of speech means you have to speak the truth, but they try to speak it in a way which is priyam, pleasing, and hitam, beneficial. So renunciation is not a bad thing. Although Daksha is criticizing Narad Muni that you created this mentality of renunciation, actually renunciation is the most beautiful thing. Because when we become renounced, you're basically saving yourself from so many problems. You're saving yourself from so much disappointment. You're saving yourself from so much frustration. Taking renunciation is like taking a bitter medicine. Although that medicine is very, very bitter, and sometimes it's very difficult to put it down your throat, ultimately once you take that medicine, you will have an immunization against a bigger disease. And therefore, although the medicine is bitter, the disease is even more painful. And so, better than experiencing the disease is to take the voluntary pain of some renunciation. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada said these are the 4 regulative principles of freedom, which almost sounds like a very interesting terminology. How can regulation bring you freedom? But the idea is that when you restrict yourself from certain things, then you save yourself from becoming entangled and attached in more painful ways. And so in this way, renunciation is a very, very beautiful thing. And therefore in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it said, Mahaprabhur Bhakta Ganer Vairagya Pradhan Jahadeki Pritahane Gaura Bhagavan. That renunciation is the basic principle sustaining the lives of all devotees. Jahadeki, and when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sees it, Pritahana, he becomes very, very happy to see that people have become renounced, because through this renunciation one can achieve something much better. While one is attached to the material world, they can never really experience the bliss of Krishna consciousness. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhogeshvarya prashaktanam tayaparita chetasham vyavasayatmika buddhi samado nuvidiyate. While one is attached to bhoga, enjoyment, and aishvarya, opulence, vyavasayatmika buddhi, the resolute determination for devotional service, samadho nuvidiyate, never takes place. And so by becoming renounced and somewhat detached, one can then become very, very focused on what will actually bring them real happiness. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki. So if anyone has any question or comment or any clarification you would like on renunciation, enjoyment, or any of these points, Daksha and Narad Muni. No questions? Any comments?
Regarding renunciation, it needs to be a particular situation that our renunciation is actually, you could say, we have to be doubly renounced, because when we become renounced externally in the society, then we actually get all this opulence, you can say, as a recognized,
you get glorified for that.
Society, you get glorified, you get most followers, you get lots of also monetary, things, and also you get facilities. So you have to, in this sense, you have to be extra renounced. Although you are renounced, you take a renounced order, you have to be extra renouncing even this thing. So it's like a double renunciation.
Yeah, nice point.
It's a tricky thing. This is not the end. The renunciation, the position of renunciant in the society is not the end.
Yeah.
It's just has to be another actual renunciation.
Yeah. So there's external renunciation, which is you walk away from certain types of enjoyments and all of these things. And when you do that, the irony is that sometimes you get name, fame, facility, and then you really have to develop the deep inner renunciation, where you achieve all of those things, but then internally you don't again become attached. And of course, in the history of the world, we see that often this happens, that when one becomes externally renounced, then they receive even more, and when they receive even more, then sometimes that can cause again their fall back into enjoyment again. So therefore this double renunciation, that once you've done it externally, then you have to deeply imbibe it internally, and in this way we actually become truly renounced. Thank you, very nice point. Yeah.
Maharaj, thank you. I have a question. Sometimes I imagine renunciation just as if I cut off nothing. Yeah, but when we are doing, when we are trying to give everything to Shri, so to give our senses, also designations, everything, doing abhidaya, being in the process of devotional service, doesn't it mean that renunciation is coming automatically?
Yeah. So actually,
how can I push?
with regards to renunciation, you'll find 3 types of statements in Shastra. One statement will tell you renunciation helps you in your devotion. Another statement will tell you renunciation is dangerous to your devotion. And another statement will say renunciation comes automatically as a result of devotion. You'll find all 3 of these statements, and all of them are true. Number 1, renunciation is useful for devotional service. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I quoted it, that if you hold on to material things and at the same time try and worship Krishna, then your mind will become distracted and deviated, and therefore it's not good. Therefore renunciation is useful while you're practicing. Therefore when we take initiation, it's a renunciation, because you're saying you're going to follow the 4 regulative principles. That's a renunciation. So first statement is that renunciation is useful. Second statement is that renunciation can be dangerous. Why do you think renunciation can be dangerous in your spiritual life?
Because if you're not used to it, maybe then it can overwhelm you, and you just
Okay.
because you have these desires, then you just desire it more.
Okay. There's another more specific reason.
Maybe you are fixed on it.
Yeah, that's kind of similar. Basically, what the scriptures say is that through renunciation, you can become very hard-hearted. Renunciation makes you, too much renunciation makes you very hard-hearted. You become, you kind of lose sense of how to interact, how to be sensitive, how to open your heart. And therefore, for bhakti to have a soft heart is very, very important. And therefore, sometimes it's said that renunciation is dangerous because it can make you hard-hearted. And sometimes it's said that renunciation comes automatically. That when you have the higher taste of Krishna consciousness, then you automatically, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Tashuvairagyam Jnanam Cha Yad Ahaitukam. Renunciation and knowledge automatically follow when one has devotion for Vasudeva. That is also said. So all three of these statements are true. And therefore in Vaishnav circles, we practice a very particular type of renunciation. And what is that type of renunciation or vairagya called? Yukta vairagya. Anashaktasya vishayan yatharham upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. That anashaktasya vishayan, when one is not attached to material things, yatarham upayunjata Krishna sambandha, but one utilizes everything they have and connects it in service to Krishna, yuktam vairagyam uchyate. That type of renunciation is known as yukta vairagya. So what we do in our renunciation is we don't necessarily reject the world, but what we learn to do is utilize everything in the world but for Krishna's enjoyment. And in that way we become renounced without becoming hard-hearted, because we learn how to employ everything for Krishna. So this is the type of renunciation given to us by Rupa Goswami. Is that okay? Yes. Jai Shri Shri Vijay Gauranga Nitai Ki Jai.
If I remember correctly, I think he said in one other lecture that we become happy by serving. And to some extent I think this is true. I also have this realization when we serve Krishna, it makes us happy and others, but I was also thinking there are sometimes situations where you serve and there's no reciprocation. Or let's say if you help an old woman over the street and she says, "Oh, thank you," then it's a happy situation. But sometimes you may be exploited or something. You serve, and there's nothing back, and then you feel exploited.
Yeah. So in the beginning of our devotional journey, because we are still progressing, we require some level of reciprocation, because we're not pure devotees. The pure devotee doesn't need any reciprocation. The pure devotee is just happy to serve. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamaye. I don't need followers, I don't need popularity. Those are big things. They don't even need appreciation or acknowledgement. Many times the great devotees were doing services and nobody knew, nobody was aware, but they were confident that Krishna is in my heart, Krishna knows what I'm doing. And therefore the great devotees, because they're connected with Krishna, then whether people of this world or society of this world acknowledges their service or not, it makes no difference to them. Like Mother Teresa, she had this poem on her, by the side of her bed. You know that one? It's called Do It Anyway. You heard that poem? It's a very nice poem because it explains that in the ultimate sense, everything is between you and God. I'll just get it out for you. It's a nice poem, actually. I'll read it for you. So the devotee realizes this, that Krishna is seeing everything. It's not really, doesn't really matter whether people acknowledge me or not. So she writes in her poem. Sorry, give me 1 second. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. That's very powerful, no? That's very high. Like ultimately, whether the world appreciates me or not, it's between me and Krishna. Krishna knows. But we're not there. That's very far. That's very high. And therefore, in our stage of spiritual life, we try to form relationships. We try to be in a community where we feel that exchange, that reciprocation, that love that we require. And so we try to create communities like that, where we appreciate each other, where we reciprocate, where we express our gratitude towards other devotees. And that's very nice. We should create communities like that. But eventually, when one becomes advanced enough, they only seek to give that appreciation. They only seek to give that gratitude. They only seek to give those kind words. But they don't require it themselves. And imagine you would be in a community of 50 individuals where everyone doesn't desire any gratitude, appreciation or acknowledgement for themselves, but is very enthusiastic about giving it to others. That is basically the spiritual world. So until we're there, we try to surround ourselves in a community where we feel that love and that kindness and that reciprocation. But internally we try to develop that sense that I'm not doing this because people thank me for it. Even if they didn't, I do it anyway. Because in the final analysis, it's not just between me and them, it's between me and God. Does that make sense? It's high. It's high. But that's where we're trying to go. That's pure devotional service. It's very high. So until we're there, we have Vaishnava relationships and we try to... But the pure devotee actually is said in giving, they feel like they're actually receiving. We give to then receive something. But the pure devotee, the giving is the receiving. The fact that someone accepts their service, the fact that Krishna accepts their service, the fact that they're able to do something, that in itself is the receiving. So it's amazing. When one is a pure devotee, that they're able to give is the receiving. This is the highest level of selflessness. Okay, any last points? Okay, thank you so much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Look at your